Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to the channel, and I'm here for a discussion video for you guys. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to name this video yet, but for this video, I'm going to be talking about the genre of nu metal, which is basically a subgenre of metal that started back in the 90s, and I'm sure a lot of you are very much aware of it at this point. Very controversial genre, and this is something that I've been wanting to talk about for a long time because I do have some thoughts on it. And, you know, um, it's something that has been occurring, and I've noticed it for a long time now. And it's just taking me just now to talk about it, of course. Now, what are my thoughts on the genre of nu metal as a whole? I think it's okay. I think there are some good bands in this genre. It's a very hit or miss genre, of course, and I understand that this genre is, well, somewhat controversial as well. I know that there are many people that just simply do not like nu metal at all, particularly those in the metal community, mainly those who prefer, I guess, more extreme genres of metal like death metal and black metal. Those are typically the crowds that kind of diss on nu metal, and mainly due to the accessibility of it and maybe due to, just its overall style, because a lot of people would say that nu metal kind of does have a weird style to it, at least with some bands. Some bands more so than others, of course, but some people kind of feel that way about the genre as a whole. But once again, the accessibility thing is something that I know a lot of metalheads like to diss on as well, I think. And I think a lot of people in the metal community kind of see nu metal as nothing more than just a gateway genre. It's just a gateway genre, to help you get into metal. And, once, you've spent years being a metalhead, there's really no need to be into nu metal anymore. And I know that it was a gateway for many people. There are people that I know that say that nu metal was their gateway, or at least a lot of the bands that they started out with in metal were in the nu metal genre. Now, for the record, I actually did not start out with nu metal. I actually started out with metalcore, particularly with bands like Demon Hunter. Now, Demon Hunter, even though I would say they are a metalcore band, they do have some nu metal influences in their music. So maybe that aspect of their music could be one of the reasons why their style of metal is more accessible as well. But yeah, I do think that there are many great bands in the nu metal genre, especially with bands like Linkin Park, Korn, Deftones, who, I know there's been debates on whether or not they're really nu metal, but I'd put them up there in the nu metal genre. And then there's, of course, bands like Sevendust, which, again, some people might debate, are they really nu metal, though? And some of these bands, I know that some people kind of crap on as well. Now, there are, of course, other bands that I could mention that a lot of people just simply don't like, or, just simply controversial bands in general, such as bands like Slipknot, Limp Bizkit, and System of a Down. Some people might even say those bands are weird, and yeah, I mean, I've listened to those bands, and yeah, I mean, I can agree with that to some extent. But would I say that those bands are bad? Besides Limp Bizkit, not really. But there are, of course, many bands in the nu metal genre that do gain a lot of respect from other metalheads within this community. One of those bands that come to mind immediately are Sevendust. I think Sevendust is one of the first bands that come to mind when I think of nu metal bands that a lot of people do respect, even though they might not be nu metal fans themselves. Now, Sevendust did start out as a nu metal band. Then they kind of went through some kind of evolution where they started out with nu metal with their first couple of albums, then move on to more alternative metal. And the stuff that they've been putting out recently, as far as style is concerned, this is the type of stuff that might appeal to maybe fans of bands like Breaking Benjamin and 3 Days Grace. And Deftones, I think, is another band that's highly respected within the metal community, even though they are a nu metal band. Again, that is debatable. But their first couple of albums, I definitely say, are nu metal, if nothing else. But yeah, they are pretty respected, I think. And you kind of notice something here with bands like Deftones and Seven Dust. They have a pretty mature sound, I would say. And maybe that's one of the things that, kind of do it for people because, once again, a lot of new metal bands can be kind of weird, with these certain experiments and stuff, and some of the stuff that they experiment with, and just the different approach, I guess, kind of the silliness of some new metal music, and maybe that's something that turns a lot of people away. And again, if it's not your thing, that's totally fine, but I just don't understand the necessary hate for it. That's all. But yeah, again, there are respected bands in the new metal genre. Now, what do I think of the new metal genre as a whole? Once again, I do think it is hit or miss. There's plenty of great bands in this genre, and I do think that this genre does go kind of overhated. Now, I personally do not understand those that just hate the entire genre in general, that act like there's no good bands in this genre whatsoever. Now, there are definitely genres that I prefer. You know what I'm saying? Like, I prefer thrash metal and prog metal over new metal. I would pick those genres over new metal any day, personally, but does that mean that I diss on new metal or I just don't think it's a good genre? Not necessarily. Again, there's many great bands in this genre, and so what if these bands are mainstream or recognizable or whatever, because I know that some people might not want to check out bands like Korn or Linkin Park simply because of the fact that these bands are super well known, they're super mainstream, and because of that, they don't want to check them out. Of course, once again, this goes back to those who are within the metal community, those that mostly listen to, underground extreme metal bands, of course. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with liking that stuff either, but you can combine the two. I mean, I don't know who needs to hear this, but you're allowed to do that, okay? You're not breaking any rules by, listening to bands that are not so well known, bands that may have less than 300 fans, and also bands that are very well known, bands like Korn, for example. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't have an issue with doing that, so I don't know what the deal is with that. I mean, I personally don't see anything wrong with that. The fact of the matter is, some of these bands are really great, despite the fact that they're well known or not. And regardless if the band is mainstream or considered mainstream or not, that doesn't determine the band's music or whether or not they're good or not. I used to be a person like that. Back when I was a teenager, I purposely steered away from bands like Korn and many bands in the mainstream metal because, I kind of assumed that I wouldn't like them and find them overrated or something like that. I just had a lot of assumptions. I just didn't want to be, involved with more mainstream metal music. But I've kind of gotten over that over time, and that has a lot to do with maturity as well. You just kind of you just don't care over time. You like what you like. Now, once again, new metal is not my favorite genre of metal. Again, there's other genres of metal that I do prefer, but do I think the genre is overhated? Absolutely, because, well, I'll never understand. I personally don't. Now, I know to some people in the metal community that may be watching this might not be surprised that I'm defending new metal. Now, for the record, I have been exploring more in death metal as well. So it's not like, ooh, I'm just going to defend, new metal and more accessible styles of metal. Not necessarily. Once again, there are a lot of bands in death metal that I'm very much open to. I think there's many great bands in that genre. Maybe death metal might become one of my favorite genres of metal. But I think even if I got to that point, I still wouldn't hate on new metal because I do realize that there is a place for it in metal. And there are, again, many great bands in the genre. And it's a accessible genre once again. And you have to remember that this is a genre that is helping people get into metal. Sure, maybe they're not into, your favorite black metal or favorite death metal band yet, or whatever, if they ever do. But that doesn't mean that they might not ever get to that point, you know? But just understand that they gotta start somewhere, you know? Just because they start out with bands like Linkin Park, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean that, they're stuck in the mainstream just because maybe Linkin Park is a band that they're passionate about, or maybe they're someone's favorite band. In fact, they're a lot of people's favorite band, for sure. They have millions of fans, and that's, of course, for a good reason. Well, great band. But that's really all there really is to say about it. I know I'm kind of going off on tangents here, but there's really a lot that I could say about this. You know, I just think that there's a lot of elitism in the metal community when it comes to the complaints with new metal. I don't think that this genre is as bad as many people say, particularly those in the metal community. And they have this sort of, I guess, superior attitude because, like, oh, look at me. I can tolerate music that you can't. It's basically their argument. Some of them, anyways. I know that this is not the case with all of them because, well, there's a lot of guys in the metal community that do like a lot of new metal bands. There's guys in the metal community that love bands like Korn and Slipknot and Linkin Park and Deftones and all these great bands. So that's really all there really is to say about it. But let me know what you guys think. Do you guys also agree that new metal is kind of an overhated genre? Do you think it's dissed on a little too much? I personally think so. I don't think it's as bad as many people say, but I'll just leave it at that. So with that said, let me know what you guys think. So be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, have a nice day, and take care.